How's it going, everybody? Today we're going to do something a little bit different. It is Sunday, August 11th, 2024, and I wanted to do. This might become a regular thing. I might do this on a regular, like every Sunday or something. I'm not 100% sure yet. But essentially, especially leading up to the election, I wanted to really talk about politics and kind of dig into some things that have been that bug me. And I've done videos on politics before. I've done a podcast on politics. And so this might not be for everybody, but it's something that I'm passionate about and I really want to talk about it. And we're going to start today by reading an article that I found on, it's from ABC News. So we're going to read the article and I'm going to I don't necessarily want to say debunk, but I'm going to tear apart some of the things. It's an interview with JD Vance. So if politics aren't your thing, or don't mind my hair. I'm a mess this morning. All right, it's Sunday. You're supposed to be a mess on Sunday mornings. Maybe that's what I'll call this: the messy Sunday morning news read. But it's if you're not into this kind of stuff, sorry. But if you are, you're in the right place. So let's go ahead and jump into this. I've got this. There we go. So I've got the article pulled up here, and it's, like I said, from ABC News. JD Vance pushes for 1 million deportations, defends idea of giving parents extra votes. This is going to be a fun one. I've already read the article, but I want to go through it, just tear it apart piece by piece because it's so stupid. Not ABC News, but JD Vance in general. So Republican vice presidential candidate JD Vance defended his past comments on women and families without children. The Trump campaign's proposals to deport undocumented immigrants and more in a wide-ranging interview with This Week co-anchor Jonathan Karl, which airs in full on Sunday morning. So this is coming out, I'm sure, this morning that you'll be able to see it on ABC. So this is just snippets. This isn't the full interview. And it's possible that there's places where context would be different, but ABC usually does a pretty good job of sharing the context. Despite the race tightening in recent weeks as Vice President Kamala Harris has taken over the Democratic ticket, the Ohio senator emphasized that he and Trump are extremely confident in their chances of winning the election. That's politicians in general. They all think they can win. Why would they run if they didn't, right? So of course he's confident. I think we're going to win. I also think we have to work as hard as possible for the remainder of the election to try to persuade Americans to vote for us, Vance told Karl. That's the name of the game. Yeah, that's a pretty standard answer you would expect. That would come from either candidate's going to say the same thing. Vance elaborates on pro-family views. The senator has come under fire for repeated comments made about childless Americans, including one during an interview in July 2021 with then Fox News host Tucker Carlson, where Vance described leading Democrats, including Harris, as childless cat ladies. And this has been a big theme of some of the pushback against him. In a speech before a conservative group, the Intercollegiate Studies Institute, which preceded that interview, Vance also suggested that people with children should have extra votes. And this is where we're going to start getting into the tearing apart. The Democrats are talking about giving a vote to 16-year-olds, but let's do this instead, Vance said in the speech. Let's give votes to all children in this country, but let's give control over those votes to the parents of those children. When you go to the polls of this country as a parent, you should have more power. Now, Vance told Karl that this notion was a thought experiment in response to Democratic proposal to allow younger voters and not a policy stance. Here's the problem, and this is a politician thing in general. It's not directly against JD Vance himself. He does say, I regret that the media and Kamala Harris campaign has frankly distorted what I said. No, they didn't distort what you said. They reported that they're talking about what you said because anything that you say, even before you're a political candidate, when you become a political candidate, all of those things come under the microscope. And he said they turned this into a policy proposal that I never made. I said I want us to be more pro-family, and I do want us to be more pro-family. And the thing is, as he's saying that, like that's not saying that you want people to be more, you want the country to be more pro-family. And you have to be extremely careful. And in 2021, I mean, he was a politician already. He was working on getting elected to the Ohio Senate. And when you say those kind of things, the right way to walk this back, if you truly didn't mean it, the right way to walk this back is, he said, "Do I regret saying it?" And what you should say is, "That's not the way I meant it. I'm sorry it came across that way. I don't actually think that parents should get extra votes." But he has to turn it around and make it on the Harris campaign, and how dare they take this out of... Guess what, buddy? That's part of politics. Your running mate does it all the time. You do it all the time too. That's just the way it is. You take what somebody says and you find a way to spin it on to meet your needs. And the best way you can go about taking some of the steam away from that is by saying, "No, that's not what I meant." And he kind of sort of says that, but he really focuses on the Harris campaign. And really that drives me nuts about politicians in general. The fact that that's how they talk is absolutely insane. But hey, that's what it is, okay? Okay, Vance added, "There are policy positions behind my view that the country should become more pro-family." He went on to talk about the economic struggles that families are facing, citing the increased cost of goods, rising medical bills, and other costs. The senator said that he and Trump have a plan to lower the cost of housing and food, but didn't provide details during the interview. Now, here's my problem with this, is one of their big sticking points, and one of the things they've really been pushing on lately, is saying that the Harris campaign doesn't have any policy proposals yet. And that's true. If you go to the Harris website, as of right now, there isn't any policy proposals up on it. And a lot of that's because most of the time they wait until after the convention. They wait until after they have the official big nomination to start laying out their policy, right? Because the conventions, especially for the RNC and the DNC, that's where you lay out your policy proposals. That's where you lay out what you plan on doing. Donald Trump famously doesn't have any policy proposals other than Project 2025. Donald Trump had an infrastructure plan back in 2016 that was coming anytime now, and the same thing for healthcare. Yeah, we're going to repeal and we're going to replace, and I've got the plan. The healthcare plan's coming in the next 2 weeks. That was in 2016. So you can't sit here and continue to say, "Oh yeah, we totally have a plan. We definitely have a plan. We just aren't going to talk about it yet." When you have a history, when your campaign has a history, your candidate has a history of not putting those policies forward, not actually implementing any of those policies. And you can't attack the other side for not having any policy proposals when your policy proposals are hidden and you don't want to talk about them. And some of that is because their policy proposals, like I said, are in Project 2025. And at some point, maybe I'll go back and read Project 2025 on a video or something, or at least a series, maybe. I don't know yet. Let me know. Would you like to hear me read Project 2025 in the comments? Anyway, so Trump said in an interview with Fox News last week, his solution to bringing down costs was, "We're going to drill, baby, drill," and he's been saying that. That's his tagline. Drill, baby, drill is a Republican thing. The funny thing is we are drilling more now than we have at any point in the history of the United States, and we are drilling more, and we are pulling more oil up than any other country in the world right now. So I don't know how much more you think you're going to drill, but we're already doing quite a bit. Trump has also advocated for more tariffs and tax cuts as part of his economic policies. The Trump tax cut plan is cut taxes for the rich. That's what he did in 2016, 2017 when they passed their tax bill. They cut taxes for the rich. For lower income, there was a small tax cut, but it expired, I think, right after the 2020 election. I don't quote me on that. It was 2021, I think, is when it expired. And the tax cuts for the wealthiest that were in that plan expire next year. So, tax cuts for who exactly, Donald? The more tariffs thing, economic policy is very complicated. I have taken a basic economic course, and that doesn't even cover the depth that economics has. Donald Trump doesn't understand economics at all, even on a base level. The idea that tariffs are the solution, tariffs are a tool in a box that comes with working with other countries and globally and competing and keeping, national interests. Tariffs are a tool. We can't produce everything as a country. We can't. We just don't have that capability. We have to work with partners around the world to do the things that we want to do. Part of that is tariffs, and part of that is how do you implement that policy? Because when you start raising tariffs are taxes on imports, right? When you start raising tariffs, other countries will raise their tariffs in return, and now you are trying to export to those countries, and you're not being successful. And there's a million other things beyond that, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. So tariffs and tax cuts, that's not an economic policy. That's just not. But they're playing it off as it is, because when people hear tax cuts, they're like, ooh, tax cuts, when the majority of people don't really pay that much in taxes anyway. And even the ones that do aren't going to see any relief, because Trump's not there to make tax cuts for the little guy. He's there to make tax cuts for his buddies. And that shows in the first tax plan that he passed. He's already done that. This one's a fun one. Vance's response to the mass deportation plan. Let's start with 1 million. The senator brought up the ongoing migrant crisis and again blamed Harris and the Biden administration policies, such as ending Remain in Mexico. When asked how he and Trump would accomplish their stated goal of mass deportation of as many as 20 million immigrants, a proposal experts previously told ABC News would be a nightmare, Vance said they would take a sequential approach. I mean, do you go knock on doors and ask people for their papers? What do you do? Karl asked. You start with what's achievable, Vance said. I think that if you deport a lot of violent criminals, and frankly, if you make it harder to hire illegal labor, which undercuts the wages of American workers, I think you go a lot of the way to solving the illegal immigration problem. Well, maybe you should talk to Donald Trump, because his company has employed a lot of illegal workers over time because he wants to save money. And that's what a lot of businesses do. A lot of large companies especially would do. Deport a lot of violent criminals. The thing is there's a lot of violent criminals that are legal citizens, people who were born here. This whole violent crime at the migrant crisis at the border is bullshit. Straight up. If you listen to Republicans talk, they want you to believe that there is hordes of people rolling over the border every day with knives and heroin needles, and they're ready to kill your children, and it's all bullshit. Anybody can point to one or two crimes and say, oh, see, that group is a problem. That's not the way that it works. The majority of people here legally and illegally, the reason why they're here illegally is a lot of times overstayed visas, or they have trouble getting into the courts because the immigration courts are trouble, and they aren't committing crimes on a higher. In fact, they're on a lower rate than American citizens are committing crimes. And there was a proposal to help with immigration, to help fund more courts, and to help to make that process more manageable, and Donald Trump shot it down. Republicans were on board with it. It had a lot of Republican stuff in there that they wanted passed, and they chose after Trump called and told them, hey, no, you need to vote against this, because if we fix the border before the election, I'm going to lose, because that's what he wants to run on. And that right there that should never happen. Obviously, the border doesn't matter that much if you're telling people, no, just wait till after the election. Make sure we kill this bill until after I get elected. Obviously, it's not that big of a problem. He goes on to say, I think it's interesting that people focus on, well, how do I report 18 million people? Let's start with 1 million. How do I deport? Let's start with 1 million. That's where Kamala Harris has failed. Then we can go from there. And Kamala Harris, again, they keep going after this. Kamala Harris was not the border czar. There were a lot of media outlets that put that in their headlines because it made cool headlines, but she was never in that position. She was working in diplomatic relations between the United States and Central American countries. That's what she was doing. She wasn't the border czar. She wasn't focused on the border. That was never in her job responsibilities. I just wanted to say that and get that out there. Vance agrees with Trump that VP picks don't matter most to voters, or to most voters. That's true. During an interview at the National Association of Black Journalists Conference in Chicago last month, that was a fun one. Just a short time after Trump announced Vance as his running mate, the former president raised some eyebrows when asked whether Vance would be ready to be president on day one if needed. You can have a vice president who's outstanding in every way, and I think JD is. I think that all of them would have been, but you're not voting that way. You're voting for the president. You're voting for me, Trump said, without addressing whether Vance will be ready on day one. And that's true. Most people will vote for the top of the ticket. They don't really care that much about who the running mate is. However, I would say we should care about who the running mate is. We should pay attention because who the person picks as their running mate says a lot about them as a person. And it says a lot about what their beliefs are, because you typically want to get somebody that you can work well with. And they don't have to agree on everything, but somebody you can work well with and somebody that will have your back. And somebody that you think would be a good president. And in the case of Donald Trump and Joe Biden before he dropped out, especially with the age thing, they're older. And the chances that they're going to make it 4 years are lower than somebody who is younger. So Donald Trump at 78 would be the oldest person to ever take office, even older than Joe Biden was in 2020. And he's older. I mean, there's a good chance that he wouldn't make it 4 years, that he would have a heart attack or something in the next 4 years, and JD Vance would be the one at the top of the ticket. And it was the same thing with Joe Biden when he was on the top of the ticket for the Democrats. If something happens to him, Kamala Harris would be the one to step in. You know, you look at who they select and who they think, you know, younger candidates typically are more likely to live longer, but I mean, there's a million things that could happen when you're the president of the United States, and you have to have somebody that you think is the right person for the job. You know, and I think, honestly, with Donald Trump, he probably doesn't think that way, because Donald Trump, I think, doesn't think he's ever going to die. He thinks he's infallible, and he thinks he's going to live forever. And so with him, I don't necessarily think he was thinking that, because he doesn't ever expect that JD Vance would have to take over for him. Let's see, they're voting for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, not for JD or Tim Walz. I think he's right. The politics of this really don't matter that much. I think the politics matter a little bit, but honestly, for most people, yeah, they don't matter that much. Vance stressed he's absolutely sure Trump is confident he can step in as commander-in-chief if needed. What I think that he does believe, because he made the main focus of his vetting process is, do I think this person can be president on day one? If God forbid something happens, yes, Vance said. That's nothing controversial necessarily there. Vance repeats false claims about Tim Walz's policies, and this one I really wanted to dig into. During a rally in Montana on Friday night, Trump pushed falsehoods that Democratic vice presidential candidate Governor Tim Walz's policies concerning transgender youth, accusing the Minnesota governor of signing a law letting the state kidnap children to change their gender. And JD Vance has been going after Tim Walz in so many ways, it is not even funny. And completely making things up, because he did not sign a law letting states kidnap children. It's insane that this even has to be discussed. Walz has signed legislation aimed at protecting the rights of transgender individuals to access gender-affirming care, which can include gender-affirming surgeries, but also services like counseling and non-surgical medical procedures like hormone therapy and puberty suppressants. The law does not allow what Trump claimed, and no, it does not. You can't kidnap children. The state can't come into your house and take your kids and say, ha ha ha, we're going to make them trans. Like, that's not how any of this works. Vance said he didn't fully watch the late night rally, which is funny that Vance isn't with Trump. Vance and Trump should be rallying together. The thing is Trump, and I might make a video about that at some point, but Trump is he's afraid to go out. He's too tired to campaign much, and I think he's afraid after what happened at the rally last month when he got shot. I think he's afraid to rally, and it's not necessarily, that's part of the reason. It's not the whole reason, and I don't blame him for that. I would be terrified. I would have PTSD if I got shot, while giving a speech. That's normal. But he needs to be honest about that, Anyway, saying, well, supported taking children away from their parents if the parents don't consent to gender reassignment. That's bullshit, and it's more about custody battles with parents. If there's a parent living in Minnesota, for instance, and let's say you have a child that is trans and wants to get whether it's counseling or hormone therapy or whatever, and they're trying to get that, and one parent doesn't want that, and the other parent is allowing it. First of all, it should be up to the child. That's what the counseling's there for. People need to make their own choices. If they're not hurting anybody else, And you're talking teenagers, and a lot of times older teenagers too, that are really, they're starting to find themselves. They're starting to discover who they are, and they need to be able to make that decision. And they're not hurting anybody else. And that's, as a rule, and we'll get to that right here. He referenced Walz's statement in Raleigh saying, accusing Republicans of not minding their own damn business. That right there. Mind your own damn business. If it's not hurting anybody else, if they want to make that decision, let them make that decision. Counsel, talk it through so that they understand the full ramifications of what these changes are, because at the end of the day, you have to be happy with yourself. And if you're not happy with yourself, you need to be doing what you need to do to be happy as an individual. And that's nobody else's business. Nobody else can make that choice, or should be making that choice for you. One way of minding your own damn business, John, is to not try to take my children away from me. Nobody's trying to take your children away from you. JD, you're an idiot. Nobody's trying to take your children away from you. If I have different worldviews than you. Karl pushed back, calling the kidnapping characterization crazy, which it is. The April 2023 law that Walz signed in the wake of the other states curtailing or banning access to gender-affirming care has been mischaracterized by Republicans. The Minnesota law protects patients who come to the state to receive gender-affirming health care, even if the patients live in a state where the care is illegal. The law also specifically allows the state's courts to assume temporary emergency jurisdiction in cross-state child custody disputes where a child has been unable to obtain gender-affirming care and is in Minnesota to do so. The executive director of LGBTQ+ advocacy group Outfront told the Washington Post that under the law, courts can settle parental disputes over whether a child should get this care, but it doesn't result in the parent against such care losing custody of the child. And that's what's important, is that if you have two parents and one parent is against this care and the other parent's for it, it's not about custody with the child. It's not about, they're not taking your child away from you. It's about saying, the court saying, yes, it's okay that they go ahead with this, even if one parent doesn't want that, because guess what? As a parent, you don't get to choose who your child becomes. As a parent, your job is to teach your children how to be good, productive members of society, to give them the tools that they need to take on the world. That's what your job as a parent is, not to tell them what to do or how to do it, to teach them. Vance pushes back on white supremacist Trump once dined with, who recently insulted his wife's race, and this one's a big one. Karl also asked Vance about a racist attack during targeting his wife, Usha, from the white nationalist live streamer Nick Fuentes, who Trump dined with in November 2022. I'm not sure if that's Usha or Usha. I honestly, I don't know how to pronounce his wife's name, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. In a recent live stream, Fuentes said, "What kind of man marries somebody named Usha? Clearly, he doesn't value his racial identity. My attitude to these people attacking my wife is she's beautiful, she's smart. What kind of a man marries Usha? A very smart man, a very lucky man," Vance said of his wife. And I'll back Vance up on that. They should not be attacking his wife's race. Plain and simple. If these guys want to attack me or attack my views, my policy views, my personality, come after me, but don't attack my wife. She's out of your league. Yeah, you should not be attacking the spouse of a candidate, and you should not be going after the race of that spouse. That is not okay. Just not. But, and here's the caveat to that, Trump faced significant blowback for dining with Fuentes along with rapper Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, back in November 2022 at his Mar-a-Lago club in Florida. At that time, Trump said he did not know who Fuentes was and that he was brought to the dinner by Ye. In a statement given exclusively to Fox News Digital, Trump said, "I had no idea what his views were, and they weren't expressed at the table at a very quick dinner, or it wouldn't have been accepted." Here's the problem with that. Not only are you a public figure, which he's been for a long time, but you were a former president of the United States. If you have any inkling of like knowing anything about politicians and politics, and you have to have some self-awareness. And before you dine with somebody, before you sit down with somebody, you should have them vetted. You just should. And that's whether you're a public figure, whoever you are, you should be paying attention. Who is this person that I'm talking to? Because it's one thing to meet somebody in passing. If you happen to be at the same event and they come up and say hi to you and you get a picture together, to me, that's not, I'm not going to blame somebody for taking a picture with somebody that they've never met before because that person wanted a photograph with them. It happens. But in this case, the person came to your residence for dinner with you. You should have vetted them ahead of time. You should have known who they were ahead of time. Do not have people over for dinner. It's not a casual thing to bring somebody down to Mar-a-Lago to then say, oh, I didn't know what their views were. Bullshit. 5 minutes. A quick Google search would tell you who they were and what they said in the past. And then you say, no, you know what? We're not going to have you over. And friends with Kanye West, you know what his views are. He's not bringing over any good friends. I'm telling you that. So you don't get to say then later, oh, I didn't know what they thought. No. Vet. And if you're not intelligent enough to know that you need to do that before you meet with people, then you aren't intelligent enough to be president of the United States. Plain and simple. But the former president has not denounced Fuentes' white nationalist views beyond that, or the recent comments about JD Vance. In the interview, Vance contended Trump had issued plenty of condemnations and did not question the former president's dinner with Fuentes. And again, you agreed to be this man's running mate. Like, can we just talk for a second about JD Vance and agreeing to be Donald Trump's running mate after all the things he said about him in the past? And okay, fine, he changed his opinion on him. But did he change his opinion because he's grasping for power, or did he change his opinion because he now agrees with Trump and all the people that Trump meets with? In which case, dude, guys, friends, people that he met with just talk shit about your wife. And I know that doesn't matter to Republicans in general, because you look at somebody like Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz, and you see what Trump said about their wives in the past, and they suck up to him now because it's all about power. One thing I like about Donald Trump, John, is that he actually will talk to anybody, but just because you talk to somebody doesn't mean you endorse their views, Vance said, adding that Trump has been close and friendly with his family. That's the end of the article. And let me switch back over here. There we go. You cannot... Just because you're willing to talk to anybody doesn't make you... You shouldn't be willing to talk to anybody. I'm just going to say that. You should not be willing to talk to anybody. There are situations, there are times where there are people that do not deserve your time as a president, as a running to be president of the United States. There are people that do not deserve your time. You should not even entertain their ideas. You should not even entertain them in any sense because they don't deserve it. White supremacists, racists, people like that, dictators that Trump has met with from other places of the world like Erdogan or Viktor Orban do not deserve your time. You are running to be the leader of the free world, to be the president of the United States of America, and you need to be more selective about who you meet with. And that's just facts. And if you don't like that, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Do not just meet with anybody. You vet people before you meet with them. You need to know what their ideas are. It's okay to meet with people that disagree with you, but in that, if you are pro-life and you want to meet with somebody that's pro-choice, or vice versa, to have a discussion, to try to find ways to meet in the middle for certain things, to pass legislation, that's one thing. Meeting with somebody who is a racist and a white supremacist because you didn't vet them ahead of time and you didn't know what their views were, that's not okay. Plain and simple. But with that, it's getting a little bit longer than I expected it to be. But I wanted to do this. Let me know in the comments if you like this kind of video, if you like I'm thinking about maybe doing this on like a Sunday type of thing. Just kind of sitting down on Sunday mornings and reading through a news article and just kind of talking about it. Especially leading up to the election, because this is an important election. This is a big deal this year. The 2024 election is going to be the deciding election for the future of not just America, but the world. And the choices that we make And who we vote for is going to be very important, and it depends on what you want to see 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what you want America to look like, what you want the world to look like, what kind of future you want for. I've got 2 daughters, I've got a wife that I want them to have rights in the future. And I don't want to see their rights taken away. I've got people in my life that I know that I don't want to see their rights taken away. And one side, one party, not even party, one side is trying to take away those rights, and one side is supporting those rights. And so that's why it's so important to me. But I want to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let me know if you'd like to see more of this kind of stuff. If you have thoughts, maybe at some point I'll talk about reading through people's comments and seeing how we agree, disagree, that kind of thing. Because I'm open to disagreement, but keep it civil. No personal attacks. I'm not going to personally attack anybody, and I don't expect anybody to do this to personally attack. If you do, I'm going to delete your comment. Plain and simple. But that's all I got for this one. I want to thank you all for watching. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.